Hello, Erin from Morehouse Farm here with today's knitting tip, which is how to set up our sock toes for 2 at a time knitting. And the reason we'd want to do 2 at a time knitting is it allows us to do one side and then the other on each sock, and then the back side and the back side at the same time so that they always match. And the way that I've done this here, I've knit the toes individually and I've done my stockinette portion on these socks. Now I'm going to position them on the 2 circular needles for 2 at a time. I absolutely could have started at the toes and worked my way up, but there's just so much going on here. Plus a lot of us were working on a sock toe in class. Why rip that out so that we could position it for 2 at a time when we could just knit them both to the point where they're the same and then keep going? I drive that way too, by the way. I rarely backtrack. I'd always rather take a side road so that we keep having forward momentum. So that's what we're gonna do here. I have positioned my 2 socks with the row marker. This is the beginning of the round marker, also known as my yarn tail, on the right side because I am positioned to knit at the beginning of the round. And I will take one of my circular needles and my first sock toe, and I'm just gonna transfer all the stitches from the front side, which is going to be the top of my sock, onto the circular needle. So we could also knit across here. That's absolutely okay in the interest of time. So you don't have to watch me knit. It'll be that much faster just to transfer the stitches. And there we go. Stretch them out on that circular needle. And then we're going to do the same with the second circular needle. And yes, you'll notice these double-pointed needles look a little different. They are bicycle spokes, and I can't wait to share with you what we're gonna do with them in the Shabka sock knit along, which is coming up in just a little bit with Irene Wagoner, author of Keepers of the Sheep. And you can see here, just transferring, I'm using this just like a double-pointed needle right now. All I'm doing is slipping those stitches onto my circular needle so that I'm gonna have 2 socks positioned exactly the same way right next to each other. And we'll keep going with that. Oops. If you drop them off, don't worry about it, just grab them. They're not gonna go anywhere until you tell them to do something. That is what I love about knitting with wool. You are in control there. So there we go. Okay, there are my 2 socks side by side, ready to go. Now I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing with the other one. Now, you know me, I like to live dangerously, and transferring stitches takes just a little bit of time, so I'm actually gonna just pull this needle out, and I'm gonna pull this needle out, and I'm gonna pick up the stitches that way, because watch how much faster it'll go. All I'm gonna do is thread my double-pointed needle, or no, this is my second circular needle through here. All right, and I've got this little channel created by those stitches. Bing, bang, boom, there we go. That's just so quick for me, and it seems like it's a lot less finicky, and I've got one done already. Okay, on to my second one. I just want to make sure I've got all the other yarns out of the way. Here we go. See how they are nicely in position for me already? And there we are, ready to go. So now I have 2 socks lined up right next to each other on my circular needles. What I'm gonna do, turn the work over so that my working yarn is on the right side, as it always is when I'm knitting. And I'm at the beginning of the round, so I can just pick this up and knit. Now, it's important that I use the same circular needle that is holding the stitches to knit with. Otherwise, I'll end up with the points in between the socks and I won't be able to continue in the same manner. And the reason I want to keep this going in this way is I'll knit across this front of the first sock, then across the front of the second sock. I'll turn the work, knit across the back of the second sock, knit across the back of the first sock, and they will always be uniform along the way. So even if my gauge changes a little bit, and I want to keep an eye on it, make sure the socks still fit, but it's not going to be different from sock to sock. They will always match. So here goes. And I just want to make sure that my yarn is always underneath the needle coming from the bottom. If it's ever on the outside like this and I pull it over the top, I'm going to end up with an extra stitch. That's essentially doing a yarn over, and we don't want that. Be especially careful of that here at the cord. And we're just going to give this one a little extra tug so that we don't end up with a big gap. And if you do, and you see a ladder, do not panic. Just make sure you start giving it a little extra tug the next time around, and that's all I want you to do. Don't rip it out. We're gonna block it out, and we're just gonna keep on knitting, because life is too short to have to redo that. Perfection is an illusion, and it'll all come out in the wash. So we're gonna knit across all the way over to the front side of that sock. Notice here, this stitch has the right leg positioned in the back. That's usually a result of the way I purl. So I noticed it right away when I went to go knit it. You will too. It's gonna twist it. That seems a lot tighter. So as long as you know to put your needle in the hole and knit that, you're not gonna have twisted stitches. That is not wrong. That is just different. And that's the way that I am able to keep on knitting after all that tendinitis. So reading my knitting to know which way my stitch is positioned is a fantastic tool, because it means those things don't throw me off, even if it is a little different than the way the work results for other people. All right, so my other needles want to join in the fun here. Now I've got this curled up bit of my 2 socks. See how my needle points are here ready to go on the same needle. And again here, making sure that my yarn is coming from under the cable. And it's super important that I switch yarns, otherwise my socks are going to be connected. And that's really all there is to it. Switch yarns, move your stitches up so it's easier for you to work with. And I find that if I do bunch them up just a little bit, they actually move that much faster because I don't have to consistently push them up. They do the work themselves. And here we are, 2 socks at a time. Happy knitting from Morehouse Farm.